says, yes, Your Highness, you also, when you reach age of 80 or 90, your body will not remain as of today. Then he was able to understand the nature of the suffering of old age, moved little ahead. A diseased person, very weak, with pain, was appeared. Similarly asked what happened to him. He is suffering from disease, and therefore he is like that. Then again asked, disease comes to few people or it is come to everyone? The devil said, it may come everyone. Maybe remain healthy for a long time, but one time people shall have to go through disease, and this is inevitable. Then little ahead, a dead body was carried away. Many people, relatives of that dead person, were weeping and seems to be so sorrow, so sad. And then he asked what happened. The person is passed away, dead, and his relatives are making mourn, and he is carried for the cremation. The body is carried for the cremation. Then again the same question. Few people do die, or everybody shall have to die. Then he said, whosoever has born may live longer life or shorter life. Everyone is finally shall have to die. No one survive. Immediately Siddhartha said, take back to the palace. I don't wish to go any further. And he come back and he pondered upon the suffering of decay, old age, suffering of disease, illness, suffering of death, final departure. This is so pervasive to everyone. But each one of the sentient beings are desirous of happiness, pleasure, not desirous of unhappiness and displeasure. Similarly, each sentient being do have the right to pursue pleasure and happiness, right to avoid unhappiness and misery. In spite of that, the sentient beings are unable to get out of this great three miseries. And I am not an exception. Then what is use, what is value to remain in the kingdom and enjoying the superficial affluence? I must go out, renounce the world, and search a permanent remedy to put an end the entirety of the misery, including the decay, disease, and death. A way to achieve a deathlessness, decaylessness, diseaselessness, a permanent solution to the problems of these sufferings. And he renounced the kingdom. He escaped from the capital, went to a far away, near Gaya, Now it is from Kapilvastu to Gaya is about 300 kilometers. And he took a horse and the night departed and journeying. After several days he reached to near Gaya and he became a renounced person. And he met many teachers of that time. He met 6 different teachers. No one was able to satisfy him. No one was able to give the right path to attain the cessation of suffering. Then he thought he himself, through a rigorous meditation and practice, he will find it. Then he sat under a tree near the Niragyan river for 6 years with very meager amount of food and drink, and his body became so weak, and still he was in meditative mood in search of the noble path from which everybody can achieve a cessation of all miseries. Then finally he got the enlightenment at Bodh Gaya under the Bodhi tree. On the full moon day of Vasak month, he perceived the interdependent origination of all phenomena, including the suffering or including the cessation of suffering, which are come in the form of causality. The nature of Partitya Samandapad, the nature of interdependent arising, that nothing exists in this universe which is independent of everything, exists by its own inherent nature or inherent truth. All existence came into being through either dependency of causality or mutual depending on each other. The things are arising or changing and decay. So this great truth of interdependent arising nature of the phenomenon, then he was able to reverse the wheel of the birth and death. The removal of ignorance, the first cause of all the 12 links of interdependent origination, then you can achieve the cessation of all miseries. After getting enlightenment at Bodh Gaya, he saw the truth, he saw the path of enlightenment, but it is so deep, so subtle, beyond words, beyond human thought realm. It needs awakened mind. So therefore, he remained 7 weeks at Bodh Gaya, thinking that what I have experienced now is very difficult to communicate to any other person. Then many people come to him requesting him that you must teach. Then he had conversations with many wise people, and someone said that yes, the truth which you have perceived is beyond words and thoughts. It's a transcendent one. You were not able to reveal it, communicate it in totality, but still there are ways to communicate. You can communicate through similes and metaphors. You may give so many metaphors to lead the people to the direction of the transcendent reality. And secondly, you can tell it by negation. This is not the truth, that is not the truth, this is not the truth. By negating everything, then you can lead the people to the reality or to the truth. Or you can communicate it by bodily gestures as well. So therefore, you must teach through the means of bodily gesture, metaphors, using negations, and thereby you will be able to convey what you have experienced. Of course, the truth of suffering and truth of the cause of suffering, these are not uncommunicable. Everybody sees it by his or her own experience. Everybody perceives it, therefore everybody can conceive it as well. But the uncommunicable is the nature of the nirvana, the nature of the cessation of the suffering, and also certain part of the path, the perception of the ultimate truth, which is also beyond world. These two facts are difficult to communicate. The other two facts are easy to communicate. Finally, he was convinced that he must share his experience with the humanity at large. He came all the way to Sarnath. Sarnath is almost 300 kilometers away from Gaya. He traveled through the shortest route, and he reached on the 8th day to Sarnath, and he saw his first 5 disciples, and he preached. The experience of Four Noble Truth at Sarnath. He talked about the first truth of suffering. He says, whatever is an effect or result of action, the karmic force, and the mental defaultments, the kleshas, are all suffering. There's no pleasure, there's no happiness in this world. The entirety of things are nature of suffering. In this way, he says there are three different kind of suffering. The suffering of suffering, that is known to everyone. Someone is sick, someone is entering into old age, someone is dying or dead, or someone suffering from shortage of food and drink, poverty, and having done injustices, and so many things which are visible suffering. Everybody knows that is suffering. That is the first category of suffering. The second category of suffering is suffering of change. Whatever the pleasure of worldly, the pleasure which is also effect of the action and the defaultments, mental defaultments, the karma and klesha, it might appear to you as pleasure. These are not pleasure. These are cause of bigger suffering, cause of bigger sadness, because all of these are not permanent, not sustainable. The health, the wealth, the fame, the pleasure, whatever you have now, will not remain forever. It will change, it will decay, it will disappear, it will disintegrate. Even your body, you are now proud of it, handsome, powerful, very athletic kind of body, can do everything. After 60 years or 50 years, this situation no more be there. You will become frail and thin and weak by the age. Because each moment is changing, so the cause of happiness of today will become cause of misery tomorrow. So all these worldly pleasures, because of its changing nature, it will definitely one day will cause suffering. It's quite obvious to everyone. The food, the drink, the house, all these are we consider as conditions of happiness, affluence, pleasure, convenience, comfortable. But each one of these can cause your death. By food poisoning, you are taking food for health, which may cause you disease and death. The house might be collapsed, which you built for shelter of your own, may become cause of death. The enormous wealth, it may go away. Even it doesn't go away. When you die, you meet the death. You have to leave everything behind. Not a single penny will able to carry with you if you think of next life. If you are not knowing the next life, then death is the end of the ownership of all your wealth and properties. So whatever it in the category of cause of pleasure are by its own nature impermanent, transitory, and it will disintegrate and go away. So therefore this is also a misery that is termed as changing misery, the misery of change. Then finally, the third kind of suffering is the pervasiveness of dependency. No one is within our control. Nothing is within our control. The entire life of all sentient beings are under bondage of action and mental defaultments. The theory of karma, whatever you act, that will give you result on the basis of your bondage. As long as you are within the bondage of mental defaultments and the creation of mental defaultment, many positive action, negative action, neutral action, each one of will carry some result which are inevitable. So therefore, the bondage of default mind and the force of action is controlling you. You have no freedom. You have no power of decision. For example, your lifespan is predetermined by your karmic force for 80 years or 90 years. You cannot live beyond that. Even you wish to live one more day, you will not be able to live one more day because the karmic force is completed, exhausted, and you will meet die and death. After death, your stream of consciousness is not free. It does not have the pleasure of choosing your next birth. It always goes by the force of defaultment and the force of action. So this bondage is the pervasive nature of suffering. For example, the present body, our mind is imprisonment in this body. A relationship between the mind and body is not a mutual agreement. It was being determined by past karmic force, which are accumulated by the mental defaultments. Even you do not believe the theory of karma, a theory of rebirth, just talking in an ordinary sense, a non-believer can also experience that We cannot change our body like changing the cloth. An old body can be put somewhere and a new body can be wear on. Or we cannot separate our mind from the present body until the death comes. Then the body has the potential of experiencing all kind of suffering. For instance, if we do not carry a body, our mind is simply bodiless, then we cannot feel any pain. We cannot feel any disease. We cannot hurt. We cannot meet accidents and broken our legs and arms. There's no pain. We can separate our mind from the body. But that is not possible. Right from the birth till the death, the mind and body are completely in bondage with each other, inseparable. This bondage is not by nature. It is due to the force of karma. The force of karma is created by default mind, such as hate, attachment, ignorance, and so forth. So this dependency is the foundation, the ground on which you experience the suffering of decay, old age, suffering of disease, suffering by death. All these are being on the basis of inseparable body with our mind, with our consciousness. And that bondage is called the pervasive or the conditional suffering. In Sanskrit, Buddhist terminology, the first is called dukha. Dukha is suffering. Dukha means suffering of suffering. Parinam dukha, the second, parinam dukha, it refers to the misery of changing. The result, whatever you feel in pleasure, the ultimate result would be suffering, the parinam dukha. And the third is called sanskar dukha. Sanskar dukha means the conditioning upon which you are inevitably experience the suffering. So this three category of suffering is the truth of suffering, the first noble truth which one shall have to realize. Unless and until one realizes the suffering as suffering, there will be no aspiration or desire to achieve a cessation of all these. And without aspiration, you will not look for the cessation of the misery. So Buddha have said to his 5 disciples, you must know the fact of suffering. To know the effect of suffering is the first step to enter into an inner journey. This inner journey might be termed as spiritual journey as well. The spiritual journey begins with the desire of, with the aspiration of